What if everything you've been taught about history isn't quite the whole truth? Picture this: November 22nd, 1963, Dealey Plaza in Dallas. The echo of gunfire rings out, a president falls, and in an instant, the world changes forever. But was Lee Harvey Oswald really the lone gunman? Or was there something far more sinister at play, a shadowy web of conspirators pulling strings behind the scenes? This isn't just a question about one tragic day. It's a crack in the foundation of the stories we've been told, and it's not the only one. From the moon landing to the Titanic sinking, history is littered with events that don't quite add up, official narratives that feel a little too neat, a little too convenient. That's where we come in. Today, we're diving into 30 of the most gripping historical conspiracy stories that defy explanation, that make you wonder who's really writing the history books. Some of these might sound outrageous at first glance. Others, they'll leave you with a creeping sense of doubt, a nagging question: what if they're right? Because here's the thing, history isn't just a collection of facts. It's a story, and like any story, it can be shaped, edited, even rewritten by those in power. And sometimes the truth slips through the cracks, so buckle up. We're about to journey through the shadows where nothing is quite as it seems. You'll hear about hidden agendas, buried evidence, and whistleblowers who risked everything to expose the unthinkable. By the end, you might not have all the answers, but you'll never look at history the same way again. Ready to question everything? Let's begin. Picture a quiet settlement on the shores of what we now call North Carolina, late 16th century. 115 men, women, and children vanished without a trace. When supply ships returned to Roanoke Island in 1590, they found empty cabins, abandoned tools, and just a single clue carved into a wooden post: the word Croatoan. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just silence. What happened to the so-called lost colony? One theory suggests they assimilated with the nearby Croatan people, a native tribe whose name matches that eerie carving. Some historians point to local accounts of light-eyed, English-speaking indigenous communities in the decades that followed. Others argue the settlers fell victim to Spanish forces, who saw Roanoke as a threat to their colonial ambitions. But why no evidence of battle, no graves? Then there are the darker theories. A storm so violent it swept them all out to sea. A desperate, failed escape attempt by boat. Or something even more unsettling: supernatural whispers from the surrounding wilderness, a curse from the land itself. The truth we may never know, but Roanoke's mystery endures because it's more than a historical footnote. It's a haunting reminder of how easily an entire community can slip through the cracks of history, leaving behind only questions, and yet that single word, Croatoan, lingers like a ghost. Was it a distress signal, a destination, or a warning meant for those who came after? The answer might still be out there, buried beneath centuries of speculation and dust. The story of the Titanic is one we all think we know. A grand ship deemed unsinkable meets its fate on a cold April night in 1912 after striking an iceberg. But what if that wasn't the whole story? What if the sinking wasn't just a tragic accident, but a carefully orchestrated scheme? Enter one of history's most chilling maritime conspiracies: the theory that the Titanic was sunk on purpose. At the heart of this idea is the so-called switch theory. Here's how it goes. The Titanic's sister ship, the Olympic, had been severely damaged in a collision the year before. Repairing it would have been costly unless, of course, the owners could claim insurance on a total loss. Some researchers argue the two nearly identical ships were secretly swapped, with the damaged Olympic rebranded as the Titanic and sent on its doomed maiden voyage. The real Titanic, according to this theory, it sailed under the Olympic's name for years afterward. Strange details fuel these claims. The Titanic's lookouts famously had no binoculars locked away, some say, to ensure they wouldn't spot the iceberg in time. Even more suspicious, banking tycoon J.P. Morgan, a key investor in the Titanic's parent company, cancelled his trip at the last minute, citing illness. So did several other wealthy passengers with ties to the ship's owners. Coincidence, or did someone know what was coming? Of course, skeptics point to the lack of concrete evidence. Shipbuilding records show no proof of a switch, and the idea of deliberately sinking a ship with over 2,000 souls aboard seems unthinkable. But then again, history has shown that money and power can inspire unthinkable acts. Whether true or not, this theory forces us to ask, in the ruthless world of corporate greed, how far might someone go to cover a financial disaster with a literal one? The Titanic's wreckage may rest at the bottom of the Atlantic, but the questions surrounding its demise are still very much afloat. October 1943. The USS Eldridge, a naval destroyer, docks at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. According to classified documents and whispered testimonies, this is where reality itself would bend. The mission: render the ship invisible to enemy radar using a revolutionary electromagnetic field. But something went horribly wrong. Witnesses claim the Eldridge didn't just vanish from radar screens, it vanished from the port itself, reappearing miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, before snapping back to Philadelphia moments later. Sailors aboard nearby ships reported a greenish haze enveloping the vessel, accompanied by a high-pitched hum that made their teeth ache. When the Eldridge rematerialized, the crew paid a gruesome price. Some men were found embedded in the ship's metal bulkheads, their bodies fused with the steel as if the molecules had tangled mid-teleport. Others burst into flames in full view of their comrades. Survivors, those who didn't die outright, were left permanently insane, babbling about falling through the sky or seeing the devil's face in the wires. The Navy denied everything, of course. Official records called it a routine degaussing operation, a way to demagnetize the hull against mines. But why were so many personnel abruptly discharged for mental instability afterward? Why did physicist Albert Einstein's name surface in redacted memos linked to a project called Rainbow? Declassified files add fuel to the fire. One document describes optical distortion effects during electromagnetic tests, while another mentions unforeseen physiological consequences. Then there's Carlos Allende, a merchant marine who claimed to witness the experiment from a nearby ship. His frantic letters to UFO researcher Morris Jessup detailed sailors freezing mid-step or fading like ghosts. Skeptics dismiss Allende as a fabulist, but his accounts eerily match independent testimonies from other naval insiders. Could this have been a catastrophic accident in early cloaking technology? A botched attempt to manipulate space-time decades before such ideas entered mainstream science? Or just a wartime myth inflated by paranoia and trauma? The truth might lie deeper than the archives, perhaps buried with those who took their secrets to the ocean floor. Whatever happened that day, the Philadelphia experiment remains a terrifying footnote in military history, where the line between cutting-edge science and science fiction blurs into something far darker. February 1923. The Valley of the Kings hums with anticipation as archaeologist Howard Carter Price opened the sealed tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun after 3,000 years of silence. What followed wasn't just a discovery, it was the birth of one of history's most spine-chilling legends, the Curse of the Pharaohs. Within months, Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's financier, lay dead from a mysterious infection after a mosquito bite turned septic. Newspapers screamed of supernatural retribution, especially when the lights of Cairo reportedly flickered out at the exact moment of his death, and Carnarvon was just the beginning. Over the next decade, at least 11 others connected to the tomb's opening met untimely ends: suicides, strokes, even a bizarre case of arsenic poisoning. But was it really a curse? Science offers some unsettling alternatives. Modern testing revealed toxic black mold coating the tomb's walls, a natural byproduct of sealed, damp environments. Inhaling those spores could have ravaged the lungs of early explorers, especially those already weakened by Egypt's harsh climate. Then there's the radiation theory. Ancient Egyptians used uranium-based pigments in their artwork, and some researchers speculate the tomb might have contained concentrated deposits. Prolonged exposure could explain the cancers and organ failures that plagued the excavation team. But what if the real traps were man-made? Hieroglyphs suggest priests booby-trapped royal tombs with blinding dust, likely powdered limestone or asbestos, and pressure-triggered false floors. One worker reportedly died after a hidden needle pricked his hand, a device later found coated in a neurotoxic plant extract. Skeptics, of course, wave it all away as coincidence. They point out that Carter himself lived another 16 years, and most victims died of ordinary causes far removed from the tomb. Yet the legend persists, fed by eerie details. Carnarvon's dog supposedly howled and dropped dead at the same instant as his master. A handful of explorers reported nightmares of a golden pharaoh strangling them in their sleep. And then there's the tomb's most chilling warning, a hieroglyph many swear Carter suppressed. Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king. Whether curse, toxin, or psychological terror, one thing's certain: Tutankhamun's legacy isn't just gold and artifacts. It's a whisper from the past that still makes archaeologists hesitate before cracking open ancient doors. The moon has watched over Earth for billions of years, or has it? What if our closest celestial neighbor isn't a natural satellite at all, but something far stranger? This is the hollow moon theory, a concept that turns everything we think we know about the lunar surface upside down. It starts with the numbers. The moon's density is significantly lower than Earth's, and seismic data from Apollo missions revealed bizarre, ringing vibrations after module impacts, as if something inside the hollow shell was reverberating. NASA's own reports described the moon vibrating like a bell for over an hour after one experiment, a phenomenon you'd expect from a hollow metal sphere, not solid rock. Then there are the craters. Most lunar craters are suspiciously shallow, as if something beneath the surface, perhaps a metallic shell, stopped impacts from penetrating deeper. Compare this to craters on other moons or asteroids, where collisions leave deep, jagged scars. Even more puzzling, the moon's far side is dramatically more cratered than the side facing Earth, as if it were deliberately positioned to act as a shield. Ancient astronaut theorists take this further, pointing to Sumerian texts that describe a time before the moon existed, and Native American legends that speak of a great silver wagon placed in the sky by mysterious beings. Could the moon be an artificial construct, an ancient observation post, a colossal spaceship, or even a piece of lost technology? Soviet scientists Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Ashcherbakov proposed exactly that in 1968, suggesting the moon might be a hollow ark built by an advanced civilization. They argued its precise orbit, which perfectly covers the sun during eclipses, is mathematically unlikely to occur naturally. Even mainstream science admits the moon's origin is murky. The prevailing giant impact hypothesis can't fully explain why lunar rocks share isotopes identical to Earth's, as if the moon was constructed from our planet's material. Skeptics dismiss the idea as science fiction, but declassified documents add weight to the mystery. A 1970 NASA memo labeled "Confidential" discussed anomalous metallic readings beneath the lunar surface, while Apollo astronauts reported unexplained flashes of light and geometric structures visible only at certain sun angles. Whether ancient artifact or cosmic coincidence, one thing's clear: the moon guards its secrets well, and every time we look up at that barren, pockmarked face, we might not just be staring at a dead rock, but at the greatest mystery hanging in our night sky. The Ural Mountains in January 1959 are a frozen wasteland where temperatures plunge to -30 degrees and the wind howls like a living thing. Yet 9 experienced hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, ventured into that wilderness never to return. When search teams finally found their tent weeks later, it was ripped open from the inside. Footprints led away in bare feet as if the group had fled in terror. Then came the bodies. Some were clustered together, half-dressed, their hands burned by an unknown force. Others lay scattered miles apart, their skulls smashed inward with inhuman force. One victim was missing her tongue, another had eyes gouged out, and here's where the official explanation collapses. Soviet authorities shut down the investigation, classified the files, and declared it a case of compelling natural force. But what kind of nature leaves radiation on clothing, fractures ribs without bruising the skin, or tears out tongues with surgical precision? Start with the radiation. Several victims' clothes tested positive for radioactive contamination, fueling theories of a secret military experiment gone wrong. The area was later revealed to be near Soviet missile test sites, and declassified documents mention atmospheric weapons tests around that time. Could the hikers have stumbled into a classified trial of sonic or energy-based weaponry? Witnesses reported strange orange spheres in the sky that winter, described in military logs as experimental reconnaissance orbs. Then there's infrasound, low-frequency noise inaudible to humans but capable of inducing panic, organ rupture, and even hallucinations. Natural infrasound occurs during avalanches, but Dyatlov Pass showed no avalanche debris. Unless, of course, the sound was man-made, but the injuries defy even these theories. Forensic experts later concluded the skull fractures resembled those seen in high-speed collisions, yet there were no signs of impact. One doctor compared the force required to being hit by a car going 80 miles per hour. Then there's the tongue. Removed so cleanly, some investigators speculated it was excised deliberately, either as a warning or to conceal evidence of poisoning. Local indigenous Mansi tribes told stories of a wind demon that stole voices, while Soviet operatives quietly scrubbed autopsy photos from records. The truth we may never know, but the Dyatlov Pass incident endures because it's more than a mystery, it's a haunting snapshot of Cold War paranoia, where the line between natural disaster and government secrecy blurs into something far darker. And those empty boots leading into the snow, they ask a question that still chills to the bone. What were they running from? The knife blades glinted in the dim light of the Senate House on March 15, 44 BC, the infamous Ides of March. Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, collapsed under 23 stab wounds, his last sight the faces of men he'd called allies, even friends. But while history remembers Brutus as the betrayer, the truth behind Caesar's assassination is far more complex than one man's treachery. This wasn't just a personal vendetta, it was a political earthquake, years in the making, with warnings that echo through time like ghostly whispers. Take the soothsayer's chilling prophecy, beware the Ides of March. Plutarch records how Caesar brushed off the warning as superstition, even joking about it as he entered the Senate that fateful day. But the omens piled up. Priests reported sacrificed animals without hearts, an unmistakable bad sign in Roman tradition. Caesar's wife, Calpurnia, dreamed of his statue gushing blood, a nightmare so vivid she begged him to stay home. Even though weather seemed to protest, historians note unseasonal storms and strange lights in the sky in the days leading up to the murder. Were these mere coincidences or something darker, a thread of fate pulling taut before the snap? The conspiracy itself stretched far beyond Brutus and Cassius. Ancient sources suggest at least 60 senators were involved, a shocking number that hints at widespread discontent with Caesar's rule. Some feared his ambition, his self-appointment as dictator for life. Others resented his populist reforms, which threatened the aristocracy's grip on power. But here's where it gets murky. Letters from the era imply foreign backing, with whispers of Egyptian or Parthian gold funding the conspirators. Was this really about saving the Republic, or replacing one ruler with another more palatable to outside interests? Then there's the assassination's aftermath, a masterclass in political theater. The killers didn't flee, they marched through Rome waving bloody daggers, shouting about tyranny. Yet instead of inspiring revolt, the public recoiled. Caesar's body, displayed in the Forum, became a rallying point. His funeral pyre was lit in the very spot where he fell, the flames so fierce they damaged nearby buildings. The message was clear: the people loved their fallen leader, and the conspirators had miscalculated. Within 2 years, most were dead themselves, hunted down by Caesar's heir, Octavian. So was Caesar's death the last gasp of democracy or the first act of empire? The answer depends on who you ask. Some argue the senators were patriots, sacrificing one man to save a system. Others see them as elites clinging to privilege, blind to the changing world. But perhaps the most haunting question isn't why they killed him, it's whether they truly understood what would follow. Because in eliminating Caesar, they didn't restore the Republic. They paved the way for something far more absolute, the rise of emperors, and that's the real conspiracy. Not just who held the knives, but the unintended consequences that ripple across centuries, proving that even the best-laid plans can unravel in ways no one foresees. Deep in the forests of Nazi-occupied Poland near the Czechoslovakian border, something bizarre was taking shape, a device so classified that even most high-ranking SS officers knew nothing about it. Codenamed Die Glock, or the Bell, this glowing metallic object was said to hum with an otherworldly energy, suspended between 2 heavy lead-lined cylinders. According to secret wartime documents and post-war interrogations, the Bell wasn't just another weapon, it was an attempt to bend physics itself, a machine that could allegedly manipulate gravity, warp time, or even open doorways to other dimensions. At the center of this mystery stood SS General Hans Kammler, the Third Reich's shadowy overseer of advanced weapons programs. Kammler's resume reads like a villain's checklist. He managed construction of Auschwitz, spearheaded the V-2 rocket program, and by 1945 vanished without a trace along with key scientists and crates of research. Witnesses later described convoys of trucks moving strange, bell-shaped objects out of Poland as Soviet forces closed in. What makes these accounts especially chilling? The physical evidence left behind. In the very bunker complex where Die Glock was supposedly tested, Polish investigators found walls fused into glass-like material, as if exposed to extreme heat. Even stranger, the soil in the area refused to grow vegetation for decades, and nearby trees showed unnatural spiral patterns in their growth rings, effects consistent with intense electromagnetic or rotational forces. Then there's the matter of the Serum 525, a metallic liquid allegedly used in the Bell's experiments. Lab analysis of residue found on site revealed mercury and thorium isotopes, materials known today for their potential in anti-gravity research. Some theorists believe the Nazis were attempting to create a torsion field, a hypothetical energy vortex that could distort space-time. Reports from the time described test subjects, prisoners, tragically exposed to the Bell's effects, suffering gruesome fates: blood crystallization, nervous system liquefaction, bodies rotting from the inside out in minutes. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. After the war, Allied intelligence tracked Kammler's movements to a US-occupied zone in Austria, then the trail went cold. Some historians argue he was secretly recruited under Operation Paperclip, the same program that brought Werner von Braun to America. Declassified memos reference a Project Kronos in early Cold War files, with budget allocations suspiciously similar to Kammler's known research. Even more telling, in 1952, a Polish farmer uncovered a metallic artifact near the old test site, a bizarre, bell-like object covered in hieroglyphic runes that glowed faintly when handled. It vanished into Soviet custody within hours. Was Die Glock a failed superweapon, a hoax to distract Allied investigators, or something far more unsettling? The few surviving blueprints show concentric rings rotating in opposite directions at high speeds, a design eerily similar to modern theories about negative mass propulsion. And those spiral blighted trees, they match exactly what physicist Burkhard Heim predicted would happen in localized space-time distortions. Whether Nazi scientists stumbled upon bleeding-edge physics or merely unleashed something they couldn't control remains one of history's most chilling what-ifs, because if the bell was real, someone somewhere might still have the plans. January 15, 1947. A Los Angeles sidewalk becomes the stage for one of history's most grotesque crime scenes. 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, nicknamed the Black Dahlia for her jet black hair and penchant for dark clothing, lies bisected at the waist, her body drained of blood and scrubbed eerily clean. Her face is slashed into a grotesque, permanent grin from ear to ear, a signature so horrifying. It suggests the killer wasn't just a murderer, but an artist of terror. The case exploded into a media frenzy, yet 75 years later, it remains unsolved. Not for lack of suspects, but because the truth might have been buried by the very people sworn to uncover it. Start with the LAPD's baffling missteps. Crucial evidence vanished, witness statements disappeared, the coroner's original notes were lost, and rumors swirled of high-ranking officers receiving payoffs to steer the investigation away from certain leads. One detective's notebook explicitly mentioned a powerful family connected to the killing, but those pages were later ripped out, even more suspicious. The killer sent Short's personal effects, her purse, shoes, and a cryptic letter to newspapers, taunting investigators. Yet when reporters compared the handwriting to samples collected by police, they found matches to at least 3 different suspects whose names were abruptly dropped from the record. Then there's the mob angle. Short was last seen at the Biltmore Hotel, a known hub for underworld activity. Some theorists believe she overheard something she shouldn't have, perhaps about Bugsy Siegel's Flamingo casino dealings or Mickey Cohen's drug operations. A retired cop once claimed Cohen himself ordered the hit to silence Short, with the body deliberately posed to send a message to informants. The problem: key witnesses tied to organized crime either died mysteriously or refused to speak, and FBI files on the case remain heavily redacted to this day. But the most chilling theory centers on Dr. George Hodel, a prominent physician with ties to LAPD brass. His own son, a retired homicide detective, spent years piecing together damning evidence. Wiretap transcripts from 1950 where Hodel brags about committing the murder, even mimicking Short screams. Hodel's home matched the description of a black house where Short was allegedly tortured, and soil samples from his basement revealed traces of lye, the same chemical used to clean her body. Most haunting, a photo found in Hodel's archive showing a woman with Short's distinctive hairstyle, her face eerily blank, labeled Wednesday, the day she vanished. Yet despite this mountain of circumstantial evidence, the case never went to trial. Hodel fled to the Philippines, where he lived comfortably until his death, while LAPD quietly closed the file. Whether it was corruption, mob influence, or a wealthy killer's connections that buried the truth, the Black Dahlia story isn't just about one woman's tragedy. It's a mirror held up to an era where power could erase even the most gruesome of crimes. And that grinning, bisected corpse, it's not just a victim. It's a reminder that some secrets don't stay buried. They fester, waiting for someone brave enough to dig them up. Omaha, Nebraska. The year is 1988, and what begins as a routine investigation into a failed credit union spirals into one of the most disturbing political scandals in American history, one that was systematically erased from public memory. The Franklin Credit Union scandal started with embezzlement, but the deeper detectives dug, the more unthinkable the story became. Key witnesses, including children from local foster homes, stepped forward with harrowing accounts of a high-profile pedophile ring involving politicians, businessmen, and even law enforcement. At the center of it all, a D.C. lobbyist named Craig Spence, whose lavish Washington parties allegedly served as a front for something far darker. The evidence was shocking if fragmented. Flight logs showed private planes transporting minors to Spence's DC townhouse, where former staff described rooms wired with hidden cameras. One teenager, Paul Bonacci, claimed under hypnosis that he'd been forced to deliver envelopes containing child pornography to prominent figures, including a sitting U.S. senator. Another victim, Alicia Owen, testified that she'd been taken to a Chicago hotel where powerful men abused her while discussing blackmail material. Yet every time the investigation gained traction, witnesses recanted or disappeared. Case files vanished from police evidence rooms, and then came the ultimate red flag. Craig Spence was found dead in a Boston hotel room in 1989, ruled a suicide despite the belt around his neck showing no signs of stretching or struggle. What followed was a masterclass in institutional suppression. Nebraska's state legislature conducted its own probe, concluding the abuse claims were a hoax fueled by coerced testimonies. But the legislature's own records tell a different story. One investigator's notes, later leaked, described being pressured to back off by federal agents. A DC police officer who'd gathered evidence of Spence's parties was abruptly transferred. Even stranger, several witnesses who retracted their statements later admitted they'd been threatened, including Bonacci, who said an FBI agent warned him, "You'll end up like the others." The Franklin case resurfaced in 2008 when former Nebraska State Senator John DeCamp published the Franklin cover-up, compiling declassified documents and survivor interviews. Among the most chilling revelations, a handwritten list from Spence's address book, matching the initials of high-ranking officials to dates and dollar amounts. Forensic analysis suggested the entries could have been payment records, but the FBI never pursued it. Meanwhile, former Omaha Police Chief Robert Wadman, who'd initially supported the victims, reversed his stance overnight after a private meeting with what he called people above my pay grade. So why does this matter today? Because the Franklin scandal isn't just about crimes. It's about the machinery of denial. Every whistleblower who came forward faced character assassination. Every piece of evidence was dismissed as fantasy. The media, the Washington Times, ran exposés supporting the victims until their reporter, Paul Rodriguez, was reassigned after mysterious editorial pressures. Compare this to modern cases like Jeffrey Epstein's, where power operates the same way. Silence the vulnerable, discredit the accusers, and let the truth rot in a file cabinet. The Franklin cover-up forces us to ask, how many other skeletons are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to rattle them? Imagine holding a book no one alive can read. Its pages are covered in looping, alien script, accompanied by bizarre illustrations of plants that don't exist, naked women bathing in green liquid, and celestial maps of constellations no astronomer recognizes. This is the Voynich Manuscript, a 240-page mystery from the 15th century that has defied codebreakers, linguists, and even wartime cryptographers for over 600 years. The manuscript first surfaced in 1912 when antique book dealer Wilfred Voynich discovered it in an Italian monastery. But here's where skepticism kicks in. Voynich had a reputation for dramatic flair, and some historians argue he may have created the book himself to drive up its value. The vellum pages carbon date to the early 1400s, but ink analysis remains inconclusive, meaning the materials are old, but the writing could have been added centuries later. And then there's the script itself. The so-called Voynichese language follows linguistic patterns, word repetition, sentence structure, yet no alphabet matches it, and statistical analysis reveals eerie deviations from any known human language. Then come the illustrations. Nearly half the manuscript depicts fantastical botanicals, roots that glow, leaves with eyeballs, flowers that seem to pulse off the page. Yale's Voynich Library, where the manuscript now resides, once invited botanists to identify these plants. Their verdict, at least 30% are pure invention. Others resemble species from the Americas, a problem, since the manuscript predates Columbus's voyage by decades. One theory suggests the images are symbolic, perhaps alchemical codes hiding formulas for the philosopher's stone. But the most chilling section, the biological pages where tiny, hairless women float in interconnected tubes of emerald green fluid. Some researchers interpret these as early depictions of human anatomy or fertility rituals. Others see something far stranger. In 2019, an AI trained on hundreds of languages tentatively linked Voyniches to encoded Hebrew with phrases like, "She made recommendations to the priest and farmer of light." Yet when experts tried to apply this key, the rest of the text dissolved into gibberish. So who wrote it? A medieval fraudster, a Renaissance scientist guarding secrets? Or something even more extraordinary? The manuscript's astronomical section shows spiral nebulae invisible to the naked eye until telescopes were invented. How did the author know, and why, after 6 centuries of scrutiny, does this book still guard its secret so fiercely? Whether hoax or cipher, the Voynich Manuscript is a puzzle that refuses to be solved, a whisper from the past that still defies the brightest minds of the present. Turn its pages and you're not just holding history, you're holding a mystery that might never give up its ghost. March 8, 2014. Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 vanishes from radar screens halfway between Kuala Lumpur and Beijing with 239 souls aboard. What followed wasn't just a tragedy, it became one of aviation's greatest riddles, a puzzle where every piece seems to lead deeper into the shadows, the official narrative. A sudden, catastrophic event, but the evidence tells a stranger, more unsettling story. Start with the radar anomalies. While air traffic control lost contact at 1:19 a.m., military radar tracked the Boeing 777 for another hour, veering wildly off course, executing sharp turns no commercial pilot would attempt mid-flight. The plane didn't just disappear, it dodged, skirting Indonesian airspace as if deliberately avoiding detection. Then came the satellite handshakes, automated signals sent to a British company's network. These pings placed MH370 along an arc stretching deep into the southern Indian Ocean. But here's the catch. The plane's communication systems were manually disabled before the final turn. Not in an emergency, not by accident. Someone methodically switched off transponders and radios step by step like a checklist. Enter Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah's home flight simulator. Recovered hard drives revealed a chilling detail. Weeks before the flight, he'd practiced a nearly identical route, a long, fuel-exhausting path into the ocean's remotest reaches. Authorities dismissed it as coincidence, but aviation experts noted the precision. The simulated flight ended with fuel starvation over open water, exactly where MH370 debris would later wash ashore. Was this a blueprint, a suicide note written in coordinates, or something even darker? Then there's the debris. Fragments confirmed as MH370 Flaperon washed up on Reunion Island, over 2,000 miles from the primary search zone. Oceanographers called the find statistically improbable unless the plane had been deliberately steered there. Other pieces surfaced in Madagascar, Tanzania, always just enough to taunt investigators, never enough to solve the mystery. Even the recovered debris raised questions. The Flaperon's damage pattern suggested it hadn't broken off from a high-speed impact, but had been cut or detached before crashing. But what if MH370 wasn't lost at all? What if it was taken? Cybersecurity analysts point to the Boeing 777's vulnerability to remote hijacking. In 2006, a cybersecurity researcher demonstrated how a plane's satellite system could be hacked to feed false coordinates, a flaw Boeing quietly patched after MH370 vanished. Then there's the cargo manifest, 220 pounds of lithium-ion batteries, known fire hazards, and according to unverified leaks, a shipment of classified electronics bound for a Chinese defense contractor. Could someone have wanted that cargo silenced? The theories spiral from there. A shadow landing in Diego Garcia, the U.S. military base. a mass hypoxia event that left the plane flying on autopilot until fuel ran dry. Or the most haunting possibility, that MH370 disappearance wasn't an end, but a means a vessel deliberately erased to send a message the world still hasn't decoded. 6 years and $45 million in search efforts later, all we have are fragments, whispers, and a question that lingers like fog over the ocean: who wanted this plane gone? The answer might lie at the bottom of the sea or in files marked for eyes only. Rising from the red Georgia clay like a modern-day Stonehenge, the Georgia Guidestone stood for over 40 years, a towering granite enigma covered in cryptic messages about population control, morality, and a new age of reason. Then, in the pre-dawn hours of July 6, 2022, an explosion tore through the monument, reducing one of its 20-ton slabs to rubble. Officials called it vandalism, but the precision of the attack targeting the Guidestone's central pillar, where its most controversial commandments were inscribed, suggested something far more calculated. Who would want these stones silenced, and why now? The Guidestone's origins were mysterious from the start. In 1979, a man using the pseudonym R.C. Christian commissioned the structure, claiming to represent a small group of loyal Americans. The monument's 10 directives, carved in 8 languages, ranged from the benign, protect people and nations with fair laws, to the chilling, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. That last line sparked decades of controversy, with conspiracy theorists arguing the Guidestones were a blueprint for global depopulation, evidence that shadowy elites planned to cull the human race. But was their destruction the work of fringe extremists, or a staged removal by the same powers the monument allegedly served? Let's dissect the bombing first. The explosive device wasn't some amateur's pipe bomb. It was strategically placed to collapse the structure without harming nearby buildings. Surveillance footage showed a silver sedan circling the site beforehand, a detail that vanished from official reports within days. Even stranger, the remaining slabs were dismantled and hauled away hours later, despite calls to preserve them as evidence. Georgia's governor called the demolition necessary for public safety, but critics noted the speed mirrored textbook cover-up tactics. If this was anti-globalist backlash, why no group claimed responsibility? If it was random vandalism, why target the message rather than the monument itself? Then there's the timing. The bombing came just months after a surge in online scrutiny tied the Guidestones to groups like the World Economic Forum, whose Great Reset agenda was being framed as a dystopian population control scheme. Prominent conspiracy forums had recently linked R.C. Christian to old Rockefeller Foundation memos discussing optimal global carrying capacity. Coincidence? Or was the monument becoming too hot to handle? But here's the twist. Some researchers believe the Guidestones were never a genuine elite project, just an elaborate psyop designed to fuel division. The depopulation message, they argue, was bait, meant to radicalize anti-government factions and justify crackdowns on dissent. In this light, the bombing might have been a false flag, staged to paint conspiracy theorists as violent extremists. After all, the same agencies now investigating the attack once surveilled Guidestones enthusiasts under counterterrorism programs. The debris is gone, the case closed, but the questions remain. Were the Guidestones a warning, a hoax, or something in between? Their absence now speaks louder than their inscriptions ever did, because when a mystery is erased instead of explained, it doesn't disappear. It metastasizes, and somewhere in that Georgia field beneath the freshly turned earth, the real story is still waiting to be dug up. Beneath the Mediterranean waves off the coast of Antikythera in 1901, divers stumbled upon a corroded lump of bronze that would rewrite history. At first glance, it resembled little more than a barnacle-encrusted artifact from an ancient shipwreck. But once cleaned, this fist-sized object revealed an intricate system of interlocking gears. 37 in total, arranged with precision that shouldn't have existed for another 1800 years. Dubbed the Antikythera mechanism, this device wasn't just ahead of its time, it was out of time. For decades, researchers assumed it was a simple astrolabe until advanced X-ray imaging in 2006 peeled back the layers. What emerged was nothing short of astonishing. A hand-cranked, differential-geared machine capable of predicting lunar eclipses, tracking the 4-year Olympic cycle, and calculating the irregular orbits of known planets. Its complexity rivals that of an 18th-century Swiss clock, except this was crafted around 100 BC, in an era when most believed the Mediterranean world hadn't yet invented the screw, let alone precision gear teeth cut to 1/6 of a millimeter. The inscriptions, a user manual of sorts, filled with astronomical terms so advanced, some weren't documented again until the Renaissance. So how did the Greeks achieve this technological leap? Mainstream historians credit figures like Archimedes or Hipparchus, whose lost writings hint at mechanical inventions. Cicero himself described a similar device built by Archimedes that reproduced the motions of the heavens. But here's the catch: no other artifacts from the period even approach this sophistication. If the ancient Greeks had such knowledge, why did it vanish for nearly 2 millennia? This gap fuels theories that the mechanism wasn't Greek at all, but a relic of something far older. Enter the lost civilization hypothesis. The mechanism's star catalogs include data from centuries before its creation, suggesting it may have been copied from even earlier Babylonian or Egyptian models. Plato wrote of advanced technology from Atlantis, while ancient Indian texts describe flying machines called vimanas with gear systems eerily similar to Antikytheras. Could this device be a surviving fragment of prehistory's scientific golden age, preserved by chance in a shipwreck? Then there's the extraterrestrial angle. The mechanism's smallest gears have teeth so tiny, they'd require magnifying lenses to assemble technology the Greeks supposedly lacked. Its design also incorporates the Saros cycle, a complex eclipse prediction system that shouldn't have been understood without telescopes. Ancient astronaut theorists point to these anomalies as potential evidence of alien knowledge transfer, perhaps through contact with advanced beings. But even if we dismiss that idea, the mechanism's very existence forces a chilling question. How many other breakthroughs did antiquity possess that were lost to war, fire, or the slow erosion of time? Perhaps the most unsettling clue lies in the wreck itself. Among the artifacts recovered with the mechanism were statues from Rhodes, home to the famed Colossus, and coins dating to the reign of Ptolemy VI. This places the ship in the 1st century BC, when Rome was systematically looting Greek knowledge. Was this vessel carrying not just art, but the last surviving fragments of a suppressed science? The mechanism's bronze components show signs of being hastily recast, as if copied under duress. Its true origin might forever remain as fragmented as those salt-worn gears now sitting quietly in an Athens museum, whispering of a past far more brilliant and far more mysterious than we've been taught to believe. Walk into Denver International Airport and you'll find yourself surrounded by something far stranger than duty-free shops and baggage claims. Giant, unsettling murals that look less like public art and more like pages torn from a dystopian prophecy. The most infamous, Leo Tanguma's Children of the World Dream of Peace, a sprawling fresco where a menacing soldier in a gas mask looms over dead children, their bodies cradling broken rifles and wilted flowers. Nearby, another mural depicts a massive Mayan-style figure rising from flames, while a dove lies impaled on a blood-stained sword. These aren't just dark for an airport, they're apocalyptic, as if the terminal were designed not for departures but for the end of the world. But the art is just the beginning. Beneath the airport's runways lies a network of tunnels and bunkers so vast, construction crews reportedly hit underground chambers the size of football fields during building. Official records claim these are just baggage systems and fuel lines, but whistleblowers have described sealed areas with reinforced doors, ventilation systems far exceeding standard specs, and even rumored rail lines leading to undisclosed locations. Then there's the airport's dedication stone placed by the mysterious New World Airport Commission, a group with no traceable members, its inscription. A chilling dedication to the New World Order, flanked by 2 Freemason symbols and a time capsule set to open in 2094. What exactly are they waiting to reveal? Theories spiral from there. Some point to the airport's layout, which resembles a swastika when viewed from above, a design coincidence that defies explanation. Others highlight the gargoyle statues lurking near baggage claim, one of which clutches a tablet depicting the fall of the Twin Towers, years before 9/11. Even the airport's logo, a demonic-looking blue Mustang with glowing red eyes, seems designed to unsettle. The sculpture famously killed its creator when a piece fell during installation, earning it the nickname Lucifer. Bad luck or something more sinister? Then there's the matter of who funded this sprawling project. Originally budgeted at $1.7 billion, costs ballooned to nearly $5 billion, with unexplained overruns and blacked-out invoices. Conspiracy researchers cite leaked blueprints showing unmarked subterranean levels, while retired air traffic controllers have whispered about VIP-only runways designed for rapid evacuation. The most persistent claim, that Denver Airport is a modern-day Noah's Ark for the elite, a fortified hub where the powerful will retreat when society collapses. Symbols hidden in plain sight seem to support this. The mural's artist Tanguma once cryptically stated his work depicted the killing of children to make peace, a phrase he later retracted. One panel shows a girl holding a Mayan tablet prophesying global catastrophe, while another features a rainbow leading not to gold but to an empty vault. Are these just avant-garde metaphors or a roadmap to a planned reset? Even the airport's dedication plaque hints at darker intentions, listing population reduction among its engraved tenets. Typo or Freudian slip? What makes Denver Airport so compelling isn't just the eerie details, it's the sheer scale of the anomalies. Most conspiracies cling to shadows, but this one sprawls across acres of taxpayer-funded concrete, screaming its secrets in frescoes 30 feet tall. Whether it's a coincidence-laden boondoggle or a blueprint for control, one thing's certain. When your layover feels like a descent into someone's endgame, you're not just in an airport. You're standing atop the most brazen mystery in modern America, and those empty tunnels below, they're waiting for what exactly might depend on how the next chapter of history unfolds. For over 200 years, a small island off the coast of Nova Scotia has been the site of one of history's most obsessive treasure hunts. Oak Island's so-called money pit isn't just a hole in the ground, it's a labyrinth of booby traps, cryptic inscriptions, and a curse that seems to drown every attempt to uncover its secrets. The story begins in 1795, when 3 teenagers stumbled upon a circular depression in the earth, its edges lined with strange markings. Beneath layers of oak logs at precise 10-foot intervals, they found layers of charcoal, ship's putty, and coconut fiber, materials utterly out of place in the Canadian wilderness. But here's where things get eerie. Every time excavators got close to what they believed was the treasure chamber, the pit would flood with seawater, as if the ocean itself were guarding whatever lay below. Theories about what's buried there span the spectrum from plausible to fantastical. Some believe it's the lost treasure of the Knights Templar, hidden after fleeing persecution in the 14th century. Supporters of this theory point to the inscribed boulder found near the pit, its symbols allegedly matching Templar ciphers. Others argue it's the missing manuscripts of William Shakespeare, stashed by Francis Bacon, who some claim was the true author of the Bard's works. Then there's the pirate angle captain Kidd's loot or Blackbeard's plunder, buried with elaborate safeguards to ward off thieves, but the most chilling possibility: that the money pit isn't a treasure vault at all, but a decoy designed to lure the greedy to their doom. What makes Oak Island unique isn't just the mystery, it's the trail of death and obsession left in its wake. At least 6 people have died attempting to excavate the pit, including 4 workers killed in 1861 when a boiler burst, scalding them alive. In 1965, treasure hunter Robert Restall collapsed from hydrogen sulfide fumes, followed by his son and 2 others who tried to save him. Even modern efforts meet bizarre resistance. High-tech scans in 2016 revealed an anomaly 30 feet below the surface, perhaps a chest or metal object, but when crews tried to drill, their equipment mysteriously failed. Divers sent to explore the underwater tunnels reported unnatural currents, their cameras malfunctioning in the murky depths. The flooding itself defies natural explanation. Engineers have mapped a series of intricate flood tunnels, their design suggesting advanced knowledge of hydraulic systems centuries before such technology was common. Some researchers believe the builders used a network of linked channels, allowing tides to refill the pit on a timer. Others speculate the tunnels were constructed by Spanish miners protecting New World gold, or even pre-Columbian visitors with lost engineering secrets. But the most unsettling detail, the water isn't just seawater. Tests show traces of human hemoglobin, as if the pit were quite literally blood-guarded. Despite centuries of failed expeditions, the allure persists. The History Channel's The Curse of Oak Island has documented modern digs that uncover everything from Roman swords to bits of parchment, yet the big prize remains just out of reach. Skeptics argue the pit is a natural sinkhole, its artifacts planted by hoaxers. But that doesn't explain the precision of the oak platforms, the coded markers, or the way every major excavation meets the same watery fate. Whether treasure trap or elaborate ruse, Oak Island's money pit endures as a testament to human obsession, a puzzle that consumes all who dare to solve it, promising riches but delivering only riddles. And perhaps that was the real design all along, not to hide gold, but to prove that some mysteries are better left buried. August 5, 1962. Marilyn Monroe's Brentwood home is silent except for the faint hum of a midnight breeze. By sunrise, the most famous woman in the world would be found lifeless, nude, clutching a telephone receiver, her bedroom littered with pill bottles, the official story reading probable suicide. But from the moment the news broke, something felt off. The timeline didn't add up, the witnesses changed their stories, and then there was the Red Diary, a personal journal Monroe reportedly carried everywhere, filled with explosive secrets about the Kennedys, the mob, and maybe even the CIA. By the time investigators arrived, it was gone, vanished. Like so much else in this case, start with the autopsy contradictions. Monroe's bloodstream contained enough barbiturates to kill multiple people, yet no trace was found in her stomach. How did the drugs enter her system? The coroner noted injection marks on her body, but no syringe was ever recovered. Even more suspicious, her housekeeper claimed Monroe was in good spirits that evening, excited about upcoming projects. Yet the official narrative insists she was depressed, isolated a portrait carefully crafted by those who stood to lose everything if her secrets got out. And what secrets they were! Monroe's alleged affairs with both John and Robert Kennedy weren't just tabloid fodder. They placed her at the heart of power during one of America's most volatile eras. FBI files later revealed she'd called the White House over 40 times in her final months, often ranting about betrayals and being watched. One particularly chilling memo from J. Edgar Hoover's private files described Monroe as a security risk who knew too much about the brothers' dealings with the mafia. Those dealings, Sam Giancana, the Chicago crime boss, reportedly bragged about Monroe's death being a favor for silencing her. Then there's Dr. Ralph Greenson, Monroe's psychiatrist. His notes from their final session vanished, along with the Red Diary he'd allegedly urged her to keep. Greenson's own behavior raised red flags. He'd installed a live-in housekeeper to monitor Monroe days before her death, and was the one who found the body despite not living on the property. Even stranger, he ordered her room cleaned before police arrived, destroying potential evidence. Was this standard patient confidentiality or something more calculated? The CIA's shadow looms large here too. Declassified Operation Mockingbird documents show the agency's media manipulation arm worked overtime to shape the suicide narrative, planting stories about Monroe's instability. At the same time, a counter-narrative emerged from within the agency itself. Former operative Robert Morrow claimed in his memoir that Monroe was murdered to prevent her from exposing JFK's ties to a covert anti-Castro plot, one that intersected with both the mafia and rogue intelligence operatives. But the most damning evidence might be what we don't have. The LAPD's files on Monroe's death went missing in the 1980s. Key witnesses like her housekeeper and personal physician died under questionable circumstances. And that red diary, a former LAPD officer swore under oath that he'd seen it in evidence lockup, its pages filled with names, dates, and threats. By morning, it was gone. Monroe's death wasn't just the loss of a star. It was a masterclass in how power operates when cornered. The way evidence disappears, stories shift, and inconvenient voices are erased. Whether by overdose, injection, or something more sinister, one thing's certain: Marilyn didn't just leave this world, she was pushed, and the hands that did it. They're still pulling strings from beyond the grave. Amid the chaos of Dealey Plaza on November 22, 1963, one figure stands out not for her actions but for her eerie absence after the fact. Dubbed the Babushka Lady for the headscarf she wore, this mysterious woman was captured in multiple photographs calmly filming the presidential motorcade just seconds before the shots rang out. While others ducked or screamed, she remained steady, her camera trained on the unfolding tragedy with almost professional detachment. Then, like a ghost, she vanished, never approaching authorities, never surrendering her footage. In a case where every frame of film was scrutinized, her missing footage became the ultimate loose end. Who was she? The Warren Commission claimed they couldn't identify her, but declassified memos suggest otherwise. A 1978 House Select Committee document mentions an uncooperative female witness, matching her description, interviewed briefly before refusing further contact. Even more intriguing, her attire didn't fit. While most spectators dressed for a sunny Texas afternoon, the Babushka Lady wore a heavy coat and scarf, garments more suited to a chilly autumn day in Moscow than Dallas. Some researchers believe this was deliberate, a way to conceal recording equipment or even a weapon. Enhanced images show what might be a wire running from her scarf to her sleeve, fueling speculation she was part of a surveillance team. Then there's the film itself. If the Babushka Lady's footage exists, it could hold the key to the assassination's most contentious questions: the exact number of shooters, the origin of the shots, even potential accomplices in the crowd. The FBI's reaction speaks volumes. In 1964, a woman named Beverly Oliver came forward claiming to be the Babushka Lady, but her story unraveled when she couldn't produce the camera or film. Stranger still, she later alleged the FBI confiscated her footage, though no records confirm this. Skeptics argue Oliver was a disinformation plant, muddying the waters to discourage the real Babushka Lady from emerging. Theories about her identity spiral from there. Cold War analysts point to her posture and demeanor as hallmarks of KGB training, suggesting she might have been a Soviet operative documenting an operation gone wrong, or worse, participating in one. Others propose she was CIA, part of a backup team filming the assassination as insurance against loose ends. The most chilling possibility, that she wasn't just a witness but a spotter, someone guiding the shooters with subtle signals. Close-ups of her hands show what might be a cigarette held at an odd angle, a known method for relaying covert messages. But here's what keeps researchers up at night. If the Babushka Lady was innocent, why wouldn't she come forward? Unless, of course, she couldn't. In 2003, a retired Dallas cop claimed his partner had been ordered to discourage a woman matching her description from contacting investigators. The order allegedly came from higher up the chain. By then, the trail was ice cold, just another thread in a tapestry of deletions and dead ends. Whether spy, shooter, or simply a scared bystander, the babushka lady's silence speaks louder than any film could. And in a case built on unanswered questions, hers might be the most haunting of all. February 25, 1942. Just months after Pearl Harbor, the skies over Los Angeles erupted in chaos as air raid sirens wailed and searchlights crisscrossed the blackout-darkened city. What followed wasn't just another wartime false alarm. It was the only recorded instance in U.S. history where the military unleashed over 1,400 anti-aircraft shells at an unidentified airborne object. The next morning's headline screamed air raid over L.A., but the official explanation, a stray weather balloon, left more questions than answers. Why would the Army waste precious ammunition on a balloon? And why did eyewitnesses, including a future president, describe something far more unsettling? Eyewitness accounts paint a scene ripped from a sci-fi thriller. Coast artillery troops swore they saw a slow-moving, saucer-shaped craft hovering at 12,000 feet, illuminated by searchlights as shells burst around it without effect. Photographers captured surreal images of beams converging on a vague, crescent-shaped silhouette, images the War Department later dismissed as light reflections. Even more bizarre, the object reportedly traveled at speeds between 20 and 200 miles per hour, hovering motionless at times before accelerating violently. Weather balloons don't do that, neither do Japanese bombers, which lacked the technology for such maneuvers in 1942. The military's shifting explanations only deepened the mystery. First, Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox called the incident a false alarm caused by jittery nerves. Then the Army claimed it was a lost civilian blimp, except no blimps were unaccounted for that night. Finally, they settled on the weather balloon story, despite meteorologists confirming none had been launched in the area. Decades later, declassified memos revealed frantic high-level discussions about the object's unconventional flight patterns, with one general speculating it could be a new type of Japanese aerial weapon. Meanwhile, Japanese records show no aircraft operating near California that night, and post-war interviews with their pilots confirmed they'd never developed anything matching the object's described capabilities. Then there's Ronald Reagan's account. The future president, then an Army Air Forces officer stationed in L.A., told colleagues he'd seen the object firsthand, an experience that reportedly influenced his later interest in UFOs. His description matched those of other credible witnesses, police officers, pilots, and even an LA Times reporter who swore the craft absorbed direct hits without damage. Radar operators that night picked up something solid before losing contact mysteriously right as the shooting stopped and the object vanished. So what was the Battle of Los Angeles? A case of wartime paranoia, a secret Japanese psy-op using experimental balloons, or something far stranger? The incident predates the modern UFO era by 5 years, yet it shares eerie parallels with later sightings: the silent hovering, the immunity to gunfire, the sudden acceleration. Some researchers point to recovered memos suggesting the object might have been a captured German prototype, though no evidence supports this. Others believe it was a genuine unknown, a flare-up in what would become decades of military encounters with unexplained aerial phenomena. One detail lingers like the smoke over L.A. That night, Army Chief of Staff George Marshall's secret report to President Roosevelt, which described unidentified airplanes of unknown origin. That document vanished from archives shortly after the war, if it ever existed at all. Whether cover-up or confusion, the Battle of Los Angeles remains a stark reminder that sometimes the official story doesn't just fail to satisfy, it actively provokes suspicion. And when the guns fall silent, the questions keep flying. August 15, 1977, the Ohio State University's Big Ear radio telescope is scanning the cosmos as it had for years, listening to the static hum of the universe. Then at 10:16 p.m., the silence shatters. A signal bursts through the noise so powerful, so unnatural, that astronomer Jerry Amon circles the data printout in red pen and scrawls a single, awestruck word beside it: wow. This wasn't just another blip in the cosmic background. The wow signal lasted 72 seconds, the exact duration the telescope could monitor any single point in space. It blazed at a frequency of 1,420 megahertz, a radio-quiet zone where natural cosmic noise is minimal, precisely the range scientists predicted an extraterrestrial transmission would use. Most telling, the signal's intensity followed a perfect bell curve, peaking at the center of the telescope's field of view before fading, exactly as you'd expect if it came from a distant, fixed point in space. This wasn't a satellite, a plane, or a stray radio tower. It was something, and then, just as suddenly, it was gone. So what caused it? The leading natural explanation: a passing comet falls apart under scrutiny. In 2017, researchers proposed that two comets in the area could have emitted hydrogen clouds at the right frequency. But the Big Ear team pointed out a fatal flaw: comets move. The WOW signal originated from a fixed celestial coordinate near the constellation Sagittarius, with no known comets in that exact position at the time. Even stranger, follow-up scans of the same spot, totaling over 100 attempts, found nothing. If it was a comet, why didn't it repeat? Then there's the classified angle. 1977 wasn't just the era of close encounters mania. It was the height of Cold War signal intelligence. Declassified NSA documents revealed the US military was testing ultra-high frequency bursts for covert communication, some in ranges overlapping the WOW signal's frequency. Could this have been a rogue transmission bouncing off the ionosphere into space and back? The timing is suspicious. Just 3 weeks earlier, NASA had launched Voyager 1, sparking Soviet fears of space-based espionage. Was someone sending a message or testing a weapon under the cover of cosmic noise? But the most tantalizing possibility remains the simplest: we weren't alone. The signal's frequency matches the hydrogen line, the most basic element in the universe and a logical hello for any advanced civilization. Its brevity suggests intentional targeting, a focused burst aimed at Earth, perhaps from a beacon or a passing ship. SETI founder Frank Drake called it the best candidate we've ever had for alien contact. Yet without repetition, confirmation is impossible. 45 years later, the WOW signal lingers like a cosmic riddle. A message without a sender, a hello without a reply. Whether it was aliens, espionage, or an astronomical anomaly we still don't understand, one thing's certain. For 72 seconds in 1977, the universe screamed, and we still don't know why. July 14, 1518. The streets of Strasbourg erupt not with the usual chatter of market day, but with something far more unsettling. The sound of hundreds of feet pounding against cobblestones in a frantic, unstoppable rhythm. It starts with one woman, Frau Trophia, twirling alone under the summer sun. Within days, the city is gripped by a nightmare as over 400 people join her, dancing without rest, without reason, until their feet bleed and their bodies collapse. By summer's end, dozens lie dead from exhaustion, heart failure, or strokes. History calls it the dancing plague, a mystery so bizarre, even now we're left wondering what really happened in those blood-stained streets. The first theory leans on science: ergot poisoning. This sinister fungus grows on damp rye bread, releasing chemicals similar to LSD. In medieval Europe, where bread was a dietary staple, entire villages could unknowingly ingest hallucinogens. Symptoms: convulsions, spasms, and a creeping sense of doom, all documented in ergotism outbreaks. But here's the hitch: while ergot might explain hallucinations, it doesn't cause coordinated, days-long dancing. Victims of ergot poisoning writhe in pain. They don't pirouette in macabre unison. Even stranger, contemporary accounts describe the dancers as aware of their torment, begging priests for help mid-step, their terror palpable beneath the trance. Then there's mass hysteria, a psychological wildfire fueled by stress. 1518 was a brutal year in Strasbourg. Harvests failed, plague loomed. The poor starved while the church taxed them mercilessly. In such pressure cookers, collective psychosis can spread like a virus. Similar episodes dot history. Tanganyika's laughing epidemic in 1962, or the Salem witch trials. But the dancing plague stands apart. Most mass hysterias are brief, dissolving once the crowd disperses. Strasbourg's dancers, they kept going for months, some until death. Witnesses reported bystanders joining involuntarily, as if seized by an unseen force. That's not just panic, it's something darker, which brings us to the most chilling possibility. Was this orchestrated? The church held immense power in Strasbourg, and the dancing began just blocks from the cathedral. Some historians note that the city's elite, desperate to distract from their mismanagement of the famine, might have staged a spectacle to frame the dancing as divine punishment. Suspiciously, the plague ended only after authorities shipped sufferers to a mountaintop shrine, where they danced before a statue of St. Vitus, the very saint later associated with a different neurological disorder. Coincidence or a calculated move to redirect blame onto the supernatural? But the most haunting detail comes from the dancers themselves. Many described hearing music, a relentless, otherworldly tune no one else could perceive. Modern neurologists point to tarantism, a condition linked to spider bites that triggers compulsive dancing, yet no spiders were reported in Strasbourg. Unless, of course, the music wasn't auditory at all, but a weapon. Recent declassified CIA files reveal Cold War experiments using infrasound to induce disorientation and involuntary movement. Could someone in 1518 have stumbled upon a similar technology? Church bells, for instance, emit low-frequency waves at certain pitches, waves capable of triggering nausea, dread, even spasms. The truth may lie somewhere between poison, psychosis, and something we've yet to name. What's certain is this: the dancing plague wasn't just a medieval oddity. It was a perfect storm of fear, power, and the human mind's terrifying fragility. And those cobblestones, they still whisper the question no one has answered. Were those dancers victims of nature's cruelty or man's? The Amber Room wasn't just a treasure, it was a masterpiece that glowed. Imagine walking into a chamber where every inch of the walls shimmered with 6 tons of golden amber, mosaics of gemstones, and mirrors framed in gilded foliage, all crafted by 18th century artisans for Prussia's King Frederick. Then picture it vanishing without a trace during the chaos of World War II, leaving behind only whispers and a trail of blood. Nazi soldiers first laid eyes on the Amber Room in 1941 when they stormed Catherine Palace near Leningrad. Soviet curators had tried to hide its brilliance behind drab wallpaper, but the Germans saw through the ruse. Within days, they dismantled the entire room, panel by panel, jewel by jewel, packing it into crates labeled fragile before shipping it to Königsberg Castle. And then the trail goes cold. When Soviet forces retook Königsberg in 1945, the room was gone. The castle itself burned to the ground under mysterious circumstances, leaving investigators sifting through ash for clues that never came. But here's where the plot twists. Declassified KGB files suggest Stalin's own operatives might have secretly recovered the treasure, only to hide it during the post-war scramble for spoils. A 1997 memo mentions a special cultural unit tasked with smuggling looted art back to Moscow under forged paperwork. Even stranger. In 2008, a team digging near Königsberg uncovered a cryptic letter from a Nazi officer, boasting that the room was safe where no Russian boot will tread. The coordinates led to a flooded bunker, empty, save for a single amber fragment embedded in the concrete. Then there are the fringe theories. Treasure hunters claim the room was smuggled aboard the doomed Wilhelm Gustloff, a refugee ship torpedoed by Soviets in 1945, now resting in pieces under the Baltic. Others insist it's hidden beneath the ruins of a secret SS compound in Poland, guarded by decaying tripwires and landmines. The wildest rumor that American troops found it first, secretly trading it to the Soviets for captured Nazi scientists during Operation Paperclip. The most tantalizing clue emerged in 2017 when a German pensioner tore down a rotting shed and found a faded fresco matching the room's designs. Tests confirmed the paint was 18th century, but the trail ended there. No amber, no gold, just another dead end. Yet the searches continue, fueled by radar scans showing anomalies beneath old bunkers and the occasional black market dealer caught hawking what they swear is an original mosaic tile. Whether lost, stolen, or deliberately erased, the amber room's ghost lingers. Its fate isn't just a question of missing treasure. It's a mirror held up to war's darker truths. Because in the end, the real conspiracy isn't about who took it, it's about who wanted it gone forever. Late 1960s, Northern California. A serial killer taunts police with encrypted notes, his identity hidden behind a symbol, a crosshair over a circle. The Zodiac Killer wasn't just a murderer, he was a puppeteer dangling clues like bait while the authorities stumbled in the dark. 4 confirmed deaths, dozens of letters, and over 50 years later, we still don't know who he was. But the suspects, their stories are as twisted as the ciphers they're tied to. Start with Arthur Lee Allen, the name that haunts every Zodiac investigation. A convicted child molester with a fascination for codes, Allen fit the profile eerily well. Witnesses placed him near crime scenes. His handwriting bore similarities to Zodiac's letters. He even owned the same rare model of military watch referenced in one cipher. Most damning, a former friend claimed Allen confessed, boasting, "I am the Zodiac," before laughing it off as a joke. Yet when police raided his home in 1991, they found nothing conclusive. No DNA match, no smoking gun, just a basement full of weapons and a lifetime of unsettling behavior. Was Allen the killer or just a convenient scapegoat for a frustrated task force? Then there's Ted Kaczynski, yes, the Unabomber. At first glance, the two seem worlds apart. But dig deeper and the parallels chill. Both men were obsessive intellectuals who used coded messages to toy with authorities. Both targeted strangers without clear motive. Kaczynski's Montana cabin was a mere day's drive from Zodiac's hunting grounds, and his manifesto echoed Zodiac's nihilistic rhetoric, even stranger. The Unabomber's attacks began just as Zodiac's letters stopped. Coincidence or the same mind-shifting focus? FBI profilers admit the psychological overlap is uncanny, but without physical evidence, the theory remains a ghost in the case files. But the real enigma isn't just the suspects, it's the ciphers. Of the 4 major codes Zodiac sent, only 2 have been cracked, and their solutions raise more questions than answers. The 340-character cipher, broken in 2020 after half a century, revealed a rambling rant about the afterlife, not a name or location. The killer wasn't just hiding his identity, he was playing a game, reveling in the chaos. Cryptographers have tested every tool, from supercomputers to crowd-sourced brainpower, yet the remaining codes resist decryption. Some argue they're gibberish designed to waste time. Others believe the key lies in an obscure literary reference or personal grudge we've yet to uncover. Then there's the shadow of institutional failure. Police jurisdictions bickered over evidence, handwriting experts contradicted each other, key witnesses died under murky circumstances, most damning. In 1969, a patrol officer stopped a man matching Zodiac's description near a murder scene only to let him go because he seemed polite. Decades later, DNA lifted from stamps on Zodiac's letters didn't match Allen or any major suspect. Was this incompetence or something darker? Conspiracy theorists point to rumors of Zodiac's final letter, allegedly intercepted by federal agents before it reached the press. Its contents unknown, but in a case where every clue feels like a breadcrumb leading nowhere, the absence of answers speaks volumes. The Zodiac's legacy isn't just a string of unsolved crimes. It's a mirror reflecting our obsession with monsters, how we crave resolution even when none exists. Whether he died in obscurity or watched the chaos from a nursing home, one thing's certain: his greatest trick wasn't murder. It was vanishing into the noise, leaving behind a puzzle no one can solve. And those uncracked ciphers, they're not just codes, they're a challenge ticking quietly in the dark, waiting for someone to prove they're smarter than the ghost. May 10, 1941. A lone Messerschmitt fighter cuts through the moonlit skies over Scotland, its pilot navigating by dead reckoning toward an uncertain fate. This wasn't a bombing run or a reconnaissance mission, it was one of history's most baffling defections. Rudolf Hess, deputy Führer of Nazi Germany and Hitler's closest confidant, had just embarked on a rogue peace mission that would alter the course of World War II, or was it all an elaborate trap? Official records claim Hess acted alone, driven by delusions of brokering peace with Britain before Germany turned east to invade the Soviet Union, but the details don't add up. Hess, a seasoned pilot, supposedly stole a plane and flew nearly 1,000 miles without interception despite Luftwaffe protocols requiring squadrons to scramble after unauthorized takeoffs. Even stranger, British radar operators tracked his plane for hours, yet no fighters were scrambled to intercept. It's almost as if someone was expecting him. Enter the British law theory. Declassified MI6 files reveal that for months, British intelligence had been feeding false intelligence through back channels, suggesting influential aristocrats like the Duke of Hamilton, Hess's alleged contact, were open to peace talks. In reality, Hamilton was working with Churchill to bait a high-profile defector, the goal to buy time. By May 1941, Britain was reeling from the Blitz, and Stalin feared Hitler would soon betray their non-aggression pact. If Hess's capture could delay Operation Barbarossa by even a few weeks, it might give the Soviets critical prep time. The timing is suspiciously precise. Hess landed on May 10th. Barbarossa launched 6 weeks later on June 22nd, far later than Hitler's original spring timeline. Then there's Hess's post-war silence. Imprisoned for life at Spandau, he never wavered from his claim that Hitler knew nothing of his mission. But Soviet archives contain a chilling footnote. During the Nuremberg trials, Stalin's envoy reportedly told allies that Hess had confessed to being manipulated by British spies. Was this a bluff or proof the flight was a calculated ruse? Even Hess's final act fuels speculation. In 1987, the 93-year-old was found strangled with an electrical cord in a garden shed, officially a suicide, though forensic experts noted his arthritic hands couldn't have tied the knots. The truth might lie in the gaps. Hess carried peace terms offering British autonomy in exchange for a free hand in Europe, terms Churchill would have never accepted. But the mere appearance of negotiations could have made Hitler hesitate, fearing his deputy had exposed war plans. Whether fool or pawn, Hess's flight remains a masterpiece of wartime deception, one where the fog of war never fully lifted. And that garden shed, it's not just where an old man died, it's where the last witness to a shadow war was silenced. October 12, 1969. A Detroit DJ flips on his mic and sends shockwaves through the music world with a claim so outrageous, it should have been laughable: Paul McCartney is dead. Not just dead, replaced by a look-alike after a tragic car crash in 1966, with the truth hidden in plain sight across Beatles albums. What followed wasn't just a tabloid frenzy, it was a cultural scavenger hunt, with fans dissecting every lyric, every chord, every pixel of album art for clues. And the eerie part, the evidence almost makes you wonder. Start with Abbey Road. The cover itself is a funeral procession, John in white as the preacher, Ringo the pallbearer, George the gravedigger, and Paul, barefoot and out of step, the corpse. In many cultures, bare feet symbolize death, and the license plate on the Volkswagen Beetle, LMW28IF, legend says IF stood for I was, implying Paul would have been 28 if he'd lived. Then there's the SGT, Pepper's sleeve, a grave of flowers spelling Paul, and McCartney's hand holding a finger to his head like a gun. Even Revolver hides Whisper's backmask, Turn Me On, Dead Man, in Tomorrow Never Knows, or the White Album's Glass Onion, where John sings, Here's another clue for you all, the walrus was Paul. In Norse mythology, the walrus is a harbinger of death, but the smoking gun, the I Buried Paul debacle. Listen closely to Strawberry Fields Forever. As the song fades, John mutters what sounds like I buried Paul. The band later claimed he said cranberry sauce, but the timing is suspicious. It's sandwiched between Magical Mystery Tours, Your Mother Should Know, where Paul sings, Let's all get up and dance to a song that was a hit before your mother was born, and the funeral march cadence in She's Leaving Home. Even Paul's post-1966 interviews fed the fire, his voice slightly higher, his demeanor oddly rehearsed. Fans swore his earlobes were different, his smile just off. So was it a hoax, a marketing stunt? The Beatles label EMI denied it, but the clues kept coming. Paul's "Paul is dead" chant in Let It Be, Run Backwards, the Abbey Road police van matching the crash rumors, even the Three Blind Mice reference in Lady Madonna, interpreted as the remaining Beatles covering up the truth. Conspiracy theorists argue the band, drowning in contract disputes and burnout, staged the ultimate exit strategy, a slow burn mystery to eclipse their inevitable breakup. But here's the twist: McCartney himself leaned into it. In 1993, he released Paul is Live, a play on Paul is Dead, with album art mocking the Abbey Road cover, this time him holding shoes, grinning. Was this a wink or proof the whole thing was engineered? The truth, as always with the Beatles, might be stranger than fiction. Because whether stunt or supernatural, the Paul McCartney death hoax endures not just as a conspiracy, but as a testament to the band's myth-making genius, where even a rumor could become the greatest rock and roll ghost story ever told. And that barefoot walk across Abbey Road, it's not just a photo, it's a riddle wrapped in vinyl, waiting for the next generation to play it backwards. Taos, New Mexico, a sleepy desert town famed for its art galleries and adobe architecture, holds a secret you can't see but might feel. Since the early 1990s, residents have reported an eerie, relentless sound, a low-frequency hum, like a diesel engine idling in the distance, felt more in the bones than heard by the ears. 2% of the population claims to detect it, describing sleepless nights, migraines, and an inescapable vibration that follows them like a phantom. The source no one knows, but the theories, they're as unsettling as the hum itself. Start with the government angle. Nestled just 50 miles from Taos is Los Alamos National Laboratory, birthplace of the atomic bomb and still a hub for classified research. Declassified Cold War files reveal military experiments with infrasound frequencies below 20 Hz, capable of inducing anxiety, disorientation, or even organ rupture at high intensities. Could the hum be a byproduct of clandestine sonic weaponry testing? Locals point to odd correlations. The hum's intensity reportedly spiked during 1992, the same year the lab began trials on non-lethal acoustic deterrents. Skeptics counter that infrasound typically requires massive emitters, not some invisible town-wide system. Yet in 2014, researchers from the University of New Mexico detected anomalous low-frequency waves in Taos waves that defied natural explanation. Then there's the geological camp. The Rio Grande Gorge, a tectonic rift slicing near Taos, emits natural infrasound from shifting subterranean plates. Similar hums have been documented near volcanic zones like Hawaii's Big Island. But Taos's hum is curiously localized, affecting some homes while leaving neighbors untouched. Geophysicists speculate it could stem from underground aquifers resonating through porous rock, a phenomenon called the Earth's heartbeat, the hitch. Such hums usually pulse intermittently. Taus's version is constant, a drone that, once noticed, becomes impossible to ignore. The wildest theory, alien or interdimensional interference. The Taos Pueblo, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has oral traditions describing spirit voices emanating from the earth. Some modern witnesses claim the hum syncs with odd sky phenomena, UFO sightings over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, or strange light pillars that defy atmospheric science. Even skeptics admit the area's electromagnetic field behaves oddly, with compasses spinning erratically in certain spots. Could the hum be a side effect of something? A beacon, a byproduct of cloaked technology, or an unintentional bleed-through from another reality. What makes the Taos hum so compelling isn't just the mystery, it's the divide between those who hear it and those who don't. Neurologists suggest it could be a form of tinnitus, where the brain misinterprets neural noise as sound. But that doesn't explain why multiple unrelated visitors suddenly tune in to the hum during short stays, only for it to vanish when they leave town limits. Nor does it account for the recurring reports of pets behaving erratically before their owners perceive the sound, as if animals sense it first. Officially, the National Science Foundation closed its investigation in 1997 with no conclusive answer. Unofficially, the hum endures a vibrational riddle wrapped in desert silence. Whether military experiment, geological oddity, or something beyond our understanding, one thing's clear: in Taos, the earth sings. And for those who can hear it, the song never ends. September 22, 1979. A U.S. Vela surveillance satellite streaks silently over the remote waters between South Africa and Antarctica when its sensors catch something impossible: the unmistakable signature of a nuclear detonation. A blinding flash followed by a second pulse, the telltale double flash unique to atomic explosions. But when investigators scrambled to confirm, they hit a wall of denials, obscured data, and secrets so tightly guarded that even now, over 40 years later, we still don't know for sure what happened that night. Was this the illicit nuclear test of a shadow alliance, a natural phenomenon masquerading as catastrophe, or something even more unsettling, a cover-up spanning continents? The official explanations crumble under scrutiny. At first, the Carter administration suggested a meteor impact or an electrical anomaly. But meteors don't produce double flashes, and the Vela satellites had never before or since been fooled by space weather. The energy signature pointed to a blast equivalent to 3 kilotons of TNT, right in the range of early atomic weapons. Suspicion quickly turned to two nations with both motive and means: Israel and apartheid-era South Africa. Declassified memos reveal frantic back-channel communications between Washington and Tel Aviv, where Israeli officials offered contradictory statements, first dismissing the event as a technical glitch, then privately conceding to U.S. diplomats that something had occurred. Then there's the South African connection. By the late 70s, Pretoria's rogue nuclear program was the world's worst-kept secret. Documents leaked in the 90s proved they'd built at least 6 crude bombs. Even more damning, former South African naval officers later admitted their ships were in the area that night, running classified operations near Prince Edward Island, the exact coordinates of the flash. The plot thickens with whispers of collaboration. Israel needing a remote test site away from prying eyes, South Africa desperate for advanced weapons technology. A 1980 CIA assessment concluded the flash was likely joint Israeli-South African nuclear activity, but the report was buried under heavy redaction. But here's where physics complicates the conspiracy. In 2018, researchers from George Washington University reanalyzed atmospheric data and found no evidence of radioactive isotopes, the smoking gun of any nuclear test. Instead, they proposed an exotic alternative: a micrometeorite striking the satellite at the precise moment a lightning superbolt lit up the ocean below. The odds astronomical, yet the absence of fallout remains a gaping hole in the nuclear theory. Then there's the silence. Key witnesses have died under suspicious circumstances. The satellite's original data tapes were accidentally erased. Even Operation Phoenix, the US Navy's rushed mission to collect air samples from the zone, returned with conflicting results. Some samples showed elevated radiation, others none at all. Was this incompetence or deliberate obfuscation? The answer might lie in geopolitics. Admitting a clandestine nuke test would have forced the US to sanction Israel, its closest Middle East ally, during the already volatile Camp David negotiations. For South Africa, exposure could have triggered a global embargo. So what really happened over the Indian Ocean that night? The Vela incident endures not because we have answers, but because the very lack of them exposes how truth bends to power. Whether it was a secret test lost to the fog of war or a cosmic coincidence wrapped in paranoia, one thing's certain: some secrets aren't just classified, they're buried alive. And 40 years later, the double flash still flickers in the dark, waiting for someone to shine a light. The cloth lies folded in a dimly lit cathedral vault, its surface bearing the faint, haunting imprint of a man's face, eyes closed, hands crossed, wounds visible. For centuries, the Shroud of Turin has been called both a medieval forgery and the literal burial cloth of Jesus Christ. But what if the truth lies somewhere between faith and science? A mystery woven with carbon dating controversies, anatomical impossibilities, and an eerie precision no artist of the time could replicate. Start with a carbon dating debacle. In 1988, 3 independent labs tested the shroud's fibers, concluding it dated between 1260 and 1390, a clear medieval origin. Case closed, not quite. Researchers later discovered the tested sample came from a rewoven section, a patch of contamination from centuries of repairs. In 2018, forensic chemists re-examined the shroud's pollen and dust particles, finding traces matching plants native to Jerusalem, species extinct by the Middle Ages. Even more damning for the forgery theory, the shroud's linen weave matches first-century techniques found only in Masada, a fortress destroyed in 73 AD. Then there's the blood, real, human, and gruesomely accurate. Forensic analysts identified hemoglobin and bilirubin, compounds that degrade rapidly, making long-term forgery improbable. The bloodstains themselves follow the unique flow patterns of crucifixion. Wounds at the wrist, not palms, as medieval art depicted, a lance puncture to the right side, and scalp lacerations consistent with Roman flagrum whips. Most chilling, the blood type is AB, rare in Europe but prevalent in Middle Eastern populations. Skeptics argue a clever forger could have smeared actual blood, but here's the catch: the stains fluoresce under ultraviolet light, a property only found in trauma-induced blood, the kind shed under extreme suffering. But the shroud's greatest enigma isn't its age or its stains, it's the image itself. No pigment, no brushstrokes, just a faint photonegative-like imprint that, when scanned with modern 3D imaging software, reveals depth and contouring impossible to achieve with medieval techniques. NASA researchers in the 1970s were stunned to find the shroud's image behaves like a photographic negative centuries before photography existed. The darker the image, the farther the cloth would have been from the body, creating a perfect three-dimensional map. Medieval artists lacked the concept of linear perspective, let alone the ability to encode spatial data into cloth. So how was it made? Theories range from the divine, a burst of resurrection energy scorching the fabric, to the bizarre. Some scientists propose a primitive form of radiation like corona discharge that might have transferred the image. Others point to the shroud's sudden appearance in the 14th century, coinciding with the rise of alchemy and early chemical experimentation. But even these explanations falter when faced with the shroud's most haunting detail, the eyes. Enhanced imaging reveals coin-like objects placed over the eyelids, a Jewish burial custom mentioned in ancient texts but unknown to medieval Europeans. The shroud endures as a paradox, an artifact too advanced for its alleged time, too human for mere legend. Whether relic or ruse, it challenges not just our understanding of history, but the limits of artistry, science, and faith. And that ghostly face staring back from the linen, it's not just an image, it's a question, one we're still unraveling thread by thread. December 17, 1967. The sun beats down on Cheviot Beach as Australia's Prime Minister Harold Holt wades into the surf for his daily swim. Strong currents churn the water, but Holt, an experienced diver, isn't worried. Minutes later, he vanishes without a trace. The ocean gives up no body, no clothing, not even a single clue. Within hours, the nation is gripped by a question no one can answer. How does a world leader simply disappear? The official inquest called it a tragic drowning, but the whispers tell a darker story. One where espionage, betrayal, and Cold War intrigue swirl like the riptides that supposedly claimed him. Let's start with the timeline. Holt wasn't just any swimmer. He was a seasoned free diver who knew these waters intimately. Witnesses reported seeing him struggle, yet no one intervened. Even stranger, the beach was unusually crowded that day, including diplomats and security personnel. Some claim Holt was signaling distress, not to nearby swimmers, but to a submarine lurking offshore. Declassified SEO files reveal Soviet and Chinese submarines had been spotted near Australian coasts that month, fueling theories of a staged extraction. Holt had recently deepened ties with the U.S., approving secret CIA bases on Australian soil, a move that infuriated Beijing. Was his disappearance payback? A defection gone wrong, or something even more calculated? Then there's the CIA coup angle. Holt's policies were increasingly controversial. His push for conscription and unwavering support for the Vietnam War had split his party. Days before vanishing, he'd confided to aides about feeling trapped by American demands. A 1998 Senate inquiry uncovered evidence of CIA operatives monitoring Holt's movements in the weeks prior, though the files were abruptly sealed. Skeptics point to the speed with which his successor, John Gorton, reversed key policies, including distancing Australia from U.S. military ventures. Coincidence or proof of a silent takeover, but the wildest theory involves Holt faking his death. In the years following, sightings poured in from Hong Kong to Singapore, a man matching Holt's description dining in upscale restaurants, even boarding flights under aliases. The most credible account came from a retired MI6 agent in 2003 who swore he'd seen Holt at a Beijing safe house in the 70s, living under guard. Holt's widow, Zara, fueled speculation by refusing a memorial service, instead planting a lone tree in his honor. When pressed, she cryptically told reporters, "Some chapters aren't meant to be read aloud." The ocean isn't the only thing that swallows secrets. Holt's briefcase, recovered from the beach, contained notes on a pending defense deal with Indonesia, one that collapsed immediately after his disappearance. His personal diary, last seen in his office, vanished that same afternoon, and the kicker, Cheviot Beach, was later declared a prohibited military zone, barring divers from ever searching the depths where Holt was last seen. Whether devoured by the sea, whisked away by spies, or living out his days in exile, Holt's disappearance remains Australia's most enduring political mystery. And that empty stretch of shoreline, it's not just a grave, it's a locked door behind which the truth still waits, untouched by tides or time. The Simpsons has been called many things: a cultural touchstone, a satirical masterpiece, even a modern-day oracle. Because buried beneath the show's slapstick humor and absurd caricatures lies something far stranger, a string of predictions so precise they defy coincidence. From Donald Trump's presidency to the Ebola virus, From the FIFA corruption scandal to Disney's takeover of Fox episodes that aired decades before these events unfolded, the show's writers seem to have a crystal ball hidden in the writer's room. But how are these just lucky guesses, or is there something more unsettling at play? Take the most infamous example, the Trump prophecy. In a 2000 episode titled "Bart to the Future," a flash-forward shows Lisa as president, inheriting a bankrupt America left by her predecessor. The line, "We've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump." At the time, it was a throwaway joke about a brash businessman turned reality star. No one imagined that 16 years later, Trump would not only run but win. Even the show's creators dismissed it as coincidence until other predictions piled up. Then there's Disney's purchase of Fox in 2019, a media megadeal that shocked Hollywood. Yet in 1998, The Simpsons featured an episode where a fictional company called Disneynex merges with Foxstar, complete with a Mickey Mouse glove crushing the Simpson family home. The parallels are jarring, but the rabbit hole goes deeper. In 1993, an episode depicted a pandemic originating from Asia sound familiar, with symptoms mirroring COVID-19. Another episode featured a deadly virus smuggled in a suitcase eerily similar to the early days of the Ebola outbreak. Even the three-eyed fish from the show's polluted Springfield River found a real-life counterpart in Argentina years later, mutated by nuclear plant runoff. So what's behind this uncanny accuracy? Skeptics chalk it up to sheer volume. Over 700 episodes means someone will eventually guess right. But statisticians point out the specificity of these hits defies random chance. Others propose a darker theory, insider knowledge. Many writers have ties to elite circles, Harvard alumni, political staffers, even intelligence consultants. Could they be planting subtle clues leaked from closed-door meetings? Conspiracy forums buzz about time-traveling writers or an AI hidden in the show's production that somehow forecasts future events. The most compelling angle, satire as prophecy. The show's genius lies in extrapolating societal trends to their absurd extremes. Trump's rise wasn't predicted, it was satirized as the natural endpoint of celebrity politics. Disney's monopoly was a jab at corporate greed run amok. In this light, The Simpsons isn't predicting the future. It's holding up a funhouse mirror to the present, revealing trajectories too glaring to ignore. Yet the mystery lingers because some hits are too precise to dismiss. An episode about a stolen Olympic curling stone aired just days before the real-life sports betting scandal. The show's take on Bitcoin, mocked as a fad in 2014, aged like fine wine. Even the show's jokes about robot uprisings and AI ethics now feel chillingly prescient. Whether by luck, design, or something stranger, The Simpsons continues to whisper secrets in the language of punchlines. And that's the real conspiracy, not that the show knows too much, but that we've been laughing along instead of listening. From hollow moons to staged deaths, from government experiments to lost civilizations, these aren't just wild stories. They're cracks in the foundation of what we think we know. Every conspiracy we've explored tonight, no matter how outlandish, shares one thing in common. They flourish where official explanations fall short. The Titanic's suspicious sinking, the Dyatlov Pass's unsolved horrors, even Marilyn Monroe's Red Diary vanishing into thin air. These mysteries endure because they expose the uncomfortable truth that history isn't always written by the truthful. Sometimes it's scripted by the powerful, the secretive, or the simply lucky. But here's the real takeaway. Questioning isn't just for skeptics. It's how we peel back layers. When the Philadelphia experiment survivors describe men fused into bulkheads, or when the Voynich Manuscript's unreadable pages taunt linguists, they're not just oddities, they're invitations. Invitations to dig deeper, to ask who benefits from the gaps in our understanding. Because whether it's a missing prime minister or a satellite catching a rogue nuclear flash, the most compelling conspiracies aren't about proving aliens or time travelers exist. They're about proving that the world is stranger, messier, and far more controlled than we're led to believe. So what's next? That's up to you. Maybe you'll scour declassified documents for hints about the Babushka Ladies film. Maybe you'll fall down the rabbit hole of Denver Airport's murals or lose sleep over Oak Island's blood-guarded pit. Whatever mystery hooks you, chase it, but chase it smart. Separate the fringe from the factual, the hoaxes from the honest questions, and when you find something that sends chills down your spine, share it. Drop your favorite theory in the comments, debate it with fellow sleuths, and keep the conversation alive. Because history's greatest secrets aren't locked in vaults or buried in bunkers. They're hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to connect the dots. And if you're hungry for more deep dives into the shadows, more unraveling of the stories they don't want told, hit that subscribe button. The next mystery is already queued up, and trust me, you won't see the twist coming. Until then, stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, the truth isn't just out there, it's right here, lurking between the lines. All you have